What's going on there, guys? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some out there. It's the Earthmaster here on this Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. It's about 11:53 a.m. California time here. 1.2, the latest earthquake on the Earthquake 3D globe. Also notice we got some activity kicking up around the Yellowstone area and also Montana. It's kind of where I want to start off here. Right off the bat, Yellowstone down here. Seeing a little bit of swarming, well, south of Yellowstone into portions of very extreme southeast Idaho area. Getting a little swarm of separate activity here. Looks like quite a few twos and some threes in the mix there outside of Taylor, Wyoming, which sits about 17 kilometers here into the Wyoming area. This earthquake activity, just a little swarm, but it's kind of a moderate in terms of the magnitudes here. I believe we've seen some activity earlier this year within this same region, so we're going to keep an eye on that. Also up to the north, got some activity around the Montana area and the northern Rocky Mountain areas. Not too much activity consist up there in past months. Let me pull up the Yellowstone overview here real quick. I kind of want to show you guys some of the activity that's showing up here on the map. No surprise that three-pointer showed up all across the park. This is Yellowstone National Park seismograph stations here. The activity down in the southern portion of Wyoming near Taylor is showing up on this seismograph station here, but not so much on the ones in the north. This larger signature that you're seeing up here is from the 3.7, up here just north of Missoula, Montana. It sits right up against the Mission Fault, Mission Valley section. And again, that one showed up pretty nicely across the majority of the properly tuned, and I say that because sometimes these amplitudes get turned down to where you can't really see anything. For example, the Old Faithful seismograph station is not showing anything at all. A couple other ones as well. Looks like maybe Norris Museum, and it looks like maybe the Mirror Lake Plateau picked up just a little blip of a signature. But either way, a couple of these seismograph stations I really don't care for because they're not tuned properly, or maybe they are tuned to how someone wants them, but I wouldn't consider that tuned. All right. 3.7, western Montana, sitting off of this fault system here. Did a little bit of research on it. First off, it was felt by quite a few folks near the Polson area, Missoula, Whitefish area, even around Helena. All reported some light shaking from this 3.7, which was about 11 kilometers deep. Historical data, folks, does not show a lot of activity up here in Montana. I just basically pulled up a section here of Montana. Of course, down south here around the Yellowstone area and the Lake Hebgen area, we get quite a bit of earthquake activity, but specifically here around the Flathead Lake and the Helena area, earthquake activity is kind of rare. I've seen a 5.8 back in 2017, just around the Lincoln area. And around this area of the Mission Fault, we did see one back in 1952, a 5.5. Now, this fault system here is a little bit of a scary one. I did pull up an article here from 2019 from NBC Montana. They got a little article back here a couple years back about the fault system, the Mission Fault. They mentioned here in outline that it's a big one and it runs through Flathead Lake along the Mission Mountain Range. There is a possibility that a large earthquake could occur. Stickney, I guess that's a geologist there, or Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology. There we go, Mike Stickney. Looks like scientists discovered the last major earthquake on this fault system, the Mission Fault, occurred around 7,000 years ago. That's pretty crazy. That's a long time ago. In geologic perspective, though, that was kind of just like yesterday. This fault system has a capable possibility of producing a 7 to a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. Now, that would be pretty damaging for the folks in the Montana area. Pretty big one. Now the slip rate on here is pretty minimal. It's well below. Let's see if they mentioned that here. I've seen it somewhere. It may have been on a different map here. But slip rate is incredibly low, so it doesn't accumulate a whole lot of stress in a short amount of time. It takes a little time to build up enough strain for a good-sized earthquake. But 7,000 years, whew, I would say even at a very low slip rate, this thing could be ready to produce a good one. 7 to 7.5 in this area would definitely be shaking things up pretty good. So that's about the only earthquake I'm seeing here in this area, and it sits just off the southern end of the Mission Fault here in Montana. Something to watch pretty closely. Now, I know mountain ranges and fault systems exist all over here across the northern Rocky Mountain areas, but this specific fault system here, I don't recall the last time I've seen any movement on it, aside from that one just looking up here on the map back in 1952. Kind of have to pull that up. So we'll watch that area pretty closely, considering we got a little separate other swarming going on down here, a little bit further south on the Rocky Mountains here. Things getting kind of interesting right up against the North American Craton here, so we'll watch that pretty closely. Montana and this little area down here. Having difficulties finding exactly which fault system this runs on. There's the Eastern Bear Lake Fault that sits to the west here a little bit. But I'm pretty sure there's a little bit more faults here that the USGS is not showing up here on the map, so I'll look at that a little bit later. But yeah, a little bit of activity there in that region today as well. Yellowstone, specifically Yellowstone, a couple small microquakes. We'll look at the graph here again just to be sure and see what we got. The swarming that we're having, aside from the one down south, is around the Maple Creek area, and that was kind of kicking up pretty good last night, and it's still kind of continuing over the last couple hours this morning time frame. Notice these spikes here indicating some very localized earthquakes. The ones down south into the southern Wyoming area, the one that's going to be down here by Taylor, right? Where'd he go? Did I lose it? Okay, I thought I disappeared for a little bit. These down here kicked off overnight, and they kind of show up as not so spiky earthquake activity. Some of the threes did. That's going to be a couple up here, I believe. But most of the time, localized earthquake activity here to a seismograph is going to be very sharp, defined images like this on signatures on the graph. That's what we look for localized activity. And that's about it far as localized activity confined to the northwest corner of Yellowstone National Park. But still, activity down south here. Yeah, that actually kind of looks like that's more. You can kind of compare the two. There we go. Getting a couple of these blips right here. See that? That's going to be these ones south of the current swarm at the northwest corner of the park. So it kind of looks like a distant earthquake. Those are pretty obvious to see. All right, let's see what else we got here across the west. So with increasing pressure out here against the Rocky Mountain Range, up against the North American Craton, what do we have? Not a whole lot throughout the Pacific Northwest, only a couple small microquakes. And inland areas, well, Great Basin area, pretty quiet. Some movement up into northern Nevada. Now, this is kind of odd because I was just up here a few years back checking out a pretty intense earthquake swarm around the Sheldon National Antelope Refuge. Now, it looks like they may have renamed it something, but when I visited this area, it was called something different, and it's a desolate road out there. I had to take a bunch of dirt roads for an extended amount of time to get to this area, and a lot of ancient volcano activity out here in this region. I've seen obsidian, lots of other volcanic rocks throughout the region. So good possibility the stress that was up here is from collapsing potentially old lava tubes, lava domes underneath, or some type of weak areas in the crust from past volcanic activity. Pretty cool to see. But that swarm died off, and it never really came back. This was back in 2000. Yeah, I'm trying to think. 2016 maybe, when it went back there to check it out. But we got a little bit of activity today here within this region. Pretty shallow at the surface. 0 kilometers. Now I'm not for sure if they've reviewed these or not. One from yesterday and one overnight this morning time frame. Looks like it has been reviewed. So just a little activity outside the Sheldon area. We'll watch that, see if that kicks back up into any swarming. I mean, if there's no more weak areas in the crust, then it will move on. The pressure gradients will continue to move on until they find some weaker areas or some really highly built up strain areas. Let's see what we got for Northern California. Not a whole lot. A little spotty activity outside of the Bartlett Springs fault system here near Lake Pillsbury from yesterday, in our typical movement here around the Clear Lake volcanic fields. A little spotty throughout the Sierra. We got one earthquake here in the Bay just coming in within the last hour. 1.3. Just off of the, looks like it's just off the northern end of the Hayward fault system here. Another dangerous fault system that runs through the Bay. Aside from the San Andreas fault there, it's a pretty good fault system. 2.8, Half Moon Bay coming in late last night. It's just south of San Francisco, and that's off of the San Gregorio fault system there, just shy of the San Andreas fault. Down south, what do we got here? Ridgecrest filling in a little bit today, it looks like, a 1.0, the latest in that little cluster. Southern California, been a little on the spotty side. Haven't really seen any major uptick, just some very small microquake activity throughout the last couple days, I would say. It's kind of been in a pause. Haven't really seen any unusual movement, no activity in the Gulf of Mexico. So this area is kind of just very quiet right now. Most of the activity seems as though, aside from the movement out west here, seems to be situated there on the inland portion here of the North American plate. All right, nothing going on across Denver, Colorado area, or New Mexico. Nothing going on out in the oil fields of Texas. We got a little bit of activity in Oklahoma. One yesterday and one early this morning here. We had a 1.7 near the Aaron Springs, Oklahoma area. See what we have out there. Well, Golden Trend oil field. Shall we take a look real quick? Why not? See what we got out there. And a lot of times it's vegetation here. It gets covered up. It covers up these older oil pumping operations. Who knows? It could be one over here. This kind of looks like an old pond or something. But as far as this 1.7 goes, it kind of looks like it's around this creek or crick, however you want to pronounce it. Oil pumping operations, hard to say. I mean, it clearly states here on the map that it is in an oil field. Just sometimes it's hard to tell with this vegetation there. Looks like that was taken in spring or summertime when after a bunch of rain. Let's see, what else we got? New Madrid zone, been kind of chatting about that lately. Did see another earthquake after midnight, a 1.7 near the Lilburn. Hopefully that's correct. Lilburn, Missouri. 9.5 kilometers for a 1.7. And then yesterday we did see a 1.5 near Marston at 9.2 kilometers. So this area has shown a little bit of uptick over the last week, and more so than the last couple weeks we've seen here. It goes through these little trends of increased seismic activity, and then a month or so of just very minimal activity. But this is just the last 7 days here. You got about 10 earthquakes, and that's kind of like a little bit more than what we've seen, say, for example, about a month ago in a 30-day time period. So things kind of kicking up a little bit around the New Madrid zone. 3.2 looks to be the largest in the sequence here around the New Madrid zone, which sits in a very major populated area. And if you look here, excuse me, the majority of this activity is right smack dab in the New Madrid zone, which sits a little below the surface here. Not really a visible fault system. This intraplate fault area here, not Not like something you'd see out in California, where I went down the Parkfield area and I could see the warping of the bridge from the two different plates sliding past one another. This one here is kind of hard to see from the surface, but it's there. And that activity kicking right smack dab on it. We'll watch that closely. Let's see what else we got here for the area. Puerto Rico, not a whole lot going on here throughout the night time. Just a couple earthquakes from yesterday. Typical swarming. One earthquake off the coast of Panama from early this morning, 4.4 at 10 kilometers deep. South America region, seeing a little earthquake activity near Ecuador. That one from yesterday. The rest of the Peru-Chile Trench shows pretty calm, quiet conditions here. Let's check out the EMSC globe and see what we have. Looks like there has been a little bit of activity here in the, the lighter color rings. Looks like we had at least a 4-pointer and some other 3s there in the mix of the Peru-Chile Trench here, not showing up on the USGS model. So a couple earthquakes here missing, so we're seeing a little bit of activity. Down into the South Sandwich Trench, things lightened up here yesterday and early this morning. We did see another 4.7, a little bit further inland, but more at the surface. Following this deeper activity, this is a pretty cool region to watch because it's such a small subduction zone. You get to see the action in full effect. A lot of times these deeper earthquakes here trigger not only much larger activity here at the shallow regions, but also goes to show you that this deeper activity not only puts strain upstream, but also within the region of itself here, right at the plate boundary further to the west. Pretty cool to look at. The big island of Hawaii, Mauna Loa lightened up here within the last hour, 2.1. And some other quakes here in this area overnight. Looks like, let's see what we got here. A couple 1s and some 2s. Pretty much all shallow earthquake activity until you get down in the southeast flank around Pahala. Deeper movement down there. One oddball earthquake here, 1.9, 5.4 kilometers deep. I look for these little odd earthquakes here because they could be a telltale sign of some movement going on. This is looks like an automatic status here, so it has not been reviewed yet by a seismologist. So we'll wait for that and see if this is actually a legit earthquake or not. But Mauna Loa definitely lightened up a little bit. Let's give a quick glance here at the hazard notification system here from the USGS in regards to it. Looks like this was put out today. Here's the latest update on Kilauea Volcano. It's still continuing. All eruptive activity has been confined to the crater. It's been saying that here for the past few months. It doesn't look like any major changes there at Kilauea Volcano. Looks like the crater floor here has seen a total rise of about 143 meters. Wow, it's creating definitely some new land out there, 469 feet. That is, wow, 29.2 billion gallons of lava has been effused since the beginning. Goodness. All right, let's see what else we got. Mauna Loa, let's check this out here real quick and see what we got for the update. Currently not erupting. No signs of an imminent eruption at this time. Monitoring data show no significant changes. Looks like current unrest, they always mention this, current unrest is most likely being driven by renewed input of magma. We've got to watch for those ranges there, 2 to 5 miles beneath the summit. That's 3 to 8 kilometers down there when we get the magma on the move. 40 small magnitude earthquakes below 3.0 has been recorded over the past 24 hours, listed on the map. Up into the Alaska area, about the same as yesterday. Looks like the Trident volcano swarm starting to mellow out a little bit. We do have one earthquake back building here on the subduction zone, kicked off this morning, a 3.0 at 10 kilometers deep. Now this area hasn't really seen a lot of activity over the past 30 days, and I think that's kind of our seismic gap zone. Of course, the further west you go along this subduction zone, the higher the slip rate, the more built up strain over a shorter amount of time that takes place here in this region. Over here, not so much, but it still is a major seismically hazardous zone, and it does have quite a high slip rate, just not as much as these areas to the west. But this area has been pretty quiet over the last 30 days as far as 4.5 and above goes. So you might want to watch that. Got to watch for these little quiet zones and these seismic gaps. Okay, over here around the Philippines and Indonesia area, we did see things kick up here into the Java Trench region last night, about 10 o'clock my time. We've seen a 5.5 kickoff. Since then, most of the activity has been confined here to the Java Trench region. Look at that. We've had another 5-pointer, 4.5, 5.1, and a 5. A lot of activity here kicking up, while the rest of the area remains awfully quiet. So things like this might be an eye-opener. Java Trench is another major subduction zone with a very slow rate, or a very high rate, I should say, of buildup, slip rate. Some very large earthquakes have taken place here. And we'll watch that pretty closely with a little swarm like that kicking up here while the rest of the area is quiet. Could be a sign. Keep an eye on that region as well. The rest of the area, awfully quiet. No further movement down here. Excuse me. In the Australia area, we got a north wind again today, and it dries stuff out. And it's 71 degrees out here in Northern California. It's not fair. I'd rather have it cold and rainy, and right now there's no rain in the forecast for California again. Imagine that. Next year we're going to be going into a super huge mega drought. Not good. Not hopefully by then I'll be out of here. Let's see. So yeah, no major activity overnight into the region. The last one of 4.6, specifically in our little watch area, has been a 4.5. In the Tonga Trench at 466 kilometers deep. Return of some deeper activity here, but still these couple different quiet zones, folks, that we do need to watch that have not shown any significant activities up here along the Aleutian Trench. We got the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, which sits here. These areas have not seen any sufficient movement. And then we got this area around pretty much, well, we've seen lots of 6s and some 7s over here, pretty much about the Kermadec Trench all the way down through North Island, New Zealand, and the Alpine Fault. That's an area that's seen a lot of movement around it, with, I'm sure, a whole lot of strain being built up, but no adjustment. And then also right now we've seen a little bit of activity across the Java Trench, but when we get this swarm of activity stretching across the region, while the rest of these quakes here are pretty quiet, not a whole lot of newer movement. I shouldn't say quakes are quiet, but older. This could be a little bit of a sign that we could be seeing some larger activity take place. And the West Coast is the West Coast. It's pretty quiet for now, but with the inland activity up here against the old North American craton kind of extends up here into this area, might be watching for some possibly a little bit more uptick in the Yellowstone swarming department. We'll watch that as the day goes on here. All right, what else we got here? Tremor map. Let's go ahead and check the tremor map here real quick and see what we got. 0 from yesterday, nada. Not a single blip of data on that map. Go ahead and check out Mount Rainier. Nothing showing up here on the map as far as the last earthquake activity goes. I mean, it looks like we had some over the past 2 days, but nothing recent. And the seismograph up here around St. Andrews Rock, Mount Rainier, Washington, shows there's that blip that comes on every single day. Not for sure what it is. It's something that comes on, something electronic or inside the network, on the network somewhere, that causes a outside interference signal. Seismic activity looks a little minimal. There's a couple of small spikes here across the area of Mount Rainier. And let me check yesterday's time frame. Looks about the same as well. There's that blip, kind of comes on. Not for sure what that is. It looks about the same, but a little bit different type of reading there. Okay, all right, solar ham. See what we got. I got to catch up on schoolwork today. I got massive amount, probably hours worth of stuff right now I need to catch up on. I've been slacking a little bit. Flaring activity. Well, the large sunspot over here, a group of sunspots are pretty much out of view here. Here's the latest imagery of those sunspots, just visible on the northwestern limb here of the sun. Still watching those possibly for some flaring, but man, they will not be geo-effective whatsoever. We're left with these little tiny measly, I don't know. We'll see if these grow. These two probably not, but there's a couple down here we're watching that may be a little bit more watchful in the coming days. Getting a little bit of complex magnetic fields here. And another new sunspot way over here on the northeastern limb that we're going to be keeping a close eye on for some instability from those magnetic fields. Right now it looks like 95% chance of a C flare, 35 for an M flare, 10% for an X flare, and 10% protons. I don't think these guys have updated their system yet, but we'll keep an eye on that. As far as the coronal hole activity goes, got a pretty massive coronal hole here across the southern end of the sun. Not for certain, though, if this is going to be geo-effective or not. It is positioned down on the south, towards the south, but we'll keep an eye on the forecasts and see what they put out as far as it changing any of these conditions over the next couple days here, once this rotates into view. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. Have a good day. Stay safe, and we'll chat to you guys a little bit later on this evening with tonight's update. Unless something major happens. Have a good day. Peace out.